I took my family camping. What appeared in the woods changed everything. My name is Evan Mercer, and before last summer, I believed the woods were peaceful, not safe, just peaceful. A place where the loud edges of life softened a little, where you could breathe differently, slower, deeper, where the simple things, wind in the trees, fire crackling, a child's laughter, felt like medicine the world didn't sell anymore. I didn't grow up outdoorsy. My wife, Lauren, was the nature lover. Me? I was the guy who checked hotel reviews for mentions of soft pillows and quiet AC units. But I said yes to this trip, not because I wanted to sleep on the ground, not because I wanted to swat mosquitoes or pretend to enjoy the smell of damp pine needles. I said yes because I'd noticed something in my kids. Real childhood was slipping away from them. Screens always on, notifications always dinging, that jittery kind of overstimulation that makes you forget how to be bored, how to explore, how to notice things. Lauren told me, let's give them something real, Evan, even if it's messy, even if it's uncomfortable. Let's give them a memory they'll feel years from now. It was a good dream, a beautiful one, actually. I didn't know it would become a nightmare. I didn't know this trip would cost me more than I knew I could lose. I didn't know something was waiting for us out there, something that looked at us like we were already claimed. We left just after 8 a.m., our SUV packed to the roof. My son Caleb, 10 years old and newly obsessed with wilderness survival videos, sat behind me reading a book about knot tying. My daughter Mia, 7, brought a whole bag of plushies and absolutely needed each one to have a window seat. Lauren sat next to me in the passenger seat, legs folded crisscross, hair in a loose braid, sunglasses reflecting the road ahead. She always looked like she belonged on a travel blog, even when doing something as ordinary as checking the printed campground map for the 5th time. GPS works fine, babe, I teased. Not out here, she said. Besides, paper maps don't lose battery. She was right. By the time we crossed into the northern range, my phone signal dropped to 1 bar. Another 10 minutes and we were officially off-grid. Caleb pressed his face to the window. Dad, look, a hawk, Mia squealed. No, a dragon, Lauren laughed, that soft laugh that always melted something in me. It is painful, remembering that moment now, the 4 of us together. The world simple, peaceful, ordinary. If I had known what the woods were hiding, if I had known what would follow us home, I would have turned the car around. The ranger station at the entrance looked old enough to have been original to the park. Hand-carved sign, real logs, a metal bell that chimed when we opened the door. The ranger inside, a woman in her late 50s with tired eyes and a name tag that read Marjorie, studied us carefully, not suspicious, not unfriendly, just evaluating. You folks camping for the weekend? She asked. Lauren smiled. 3 days. Marjorie hesitated before stamping our permit. You staying in the Upper Hollow section? Yes, ma'am, I said. Site 31. She paused a bit too long, and in that pause, something like concern flickered in her eyes. It passed quickly, but it was real. Stay on the marked trails, she said. Her tone shifted, lower, quieter. And keep close after dark. This forest isn't like the others. Lauren raised an eyebrow. Because of wildlife. Another pause. Yes, Marjorie answered, but it didn't sound like she meant wildlife. She slid us a map, her finger tapping the camp area twice, almost like emphasis or warning. If anything feels wrong, she said, trust that feeling. Site 31 was beautiful, almost magical, a soft bed of pine needles, towering trees rising like cathedral pillars, a small creek trickling behind us, sunlight filtering through the branches in rays that felt almost holy. Lauren closed her eyes and inhaled deeply. "This," she whispered, "is what we needed." The kids ran around collecting sticks, pine cones, cool rocks, and a piece of bark Caleb swore looked like a wolf. I struggled with the tent because of course I did. The directions were drawn by some sadist who loved confusing diagrams. "Need help?" Lauren teased, hands on her hips. "No, no," I said. "I've got this under control." I did not. The tent collapsed twice before she stepped in and fixed it in under 3 minutes. By dinner time, we'd built a fire, roasted hot dogs, and watched the sun dip behind the ridgeline. The kids made s'mores, we told stories, we pointed out constellations. For a moment, life felt perfect, electric with connection, warm, grounding. If only it had stayed that way. It started small, almost insignificant. Caleb paused while roasting a marshmallow, squinting into the tree line. "You see that?" he whispered. I followed his gaze. Dark pine trees, shadows, nothing unusual. "What did you see, Bud?" He frowned. "I don't know. I thought someone was standing there." Lauren froze subtly beside me. "Someone?" she asked. "As in another camper?" "Maybe." But his voice said he wasn't convinced. I turned on my flashlight and scanned the woods just to reassure him. Nothing. No movement, no shape, no figure. "Probably just shadows," I said. But when I looked at Lauren, she wasn't looking at the woods. She was watching Caleb, and something in her expression shifted. A mother's intuition, a protective instinct, maybe even fear. Later that night, when everyone else was asleep, I lay awake listening to the wind move through the branches like distant whispers, and for the first time I thought I heard footsteps, slow, deliberate, circling the campsite. I sat up, heart pounding. The sound stopped, not faded, not retreated, stopped. Like whoever or whatever had been walking was listening. I held my breath. A full minute passed before the forest noise returned. I lay back down, telling myself it was an animal, a deer, a raccoon, something normal. But deep down, something icy coiled in my stomach, something that whispered, "You're not alone out here," and it was right. We weren't, not even close. I woke up to the sound of whispering. Not loud, not frantic, just steady, like two people having a quiet conversation outside the tent. For a moment, I thought it was part of a dream, the kind where your mind hasn't fully shifted back into reality. But then I opened my eyes. The tent was still dark, the faintest pale blue pre-dawn light starting to bleed through the fabric. Mia was curled against Lauren, breathing softly. Caleb was cocooned in his sleeping bag beside me. An arm flopped over his stuffed bear. None of them were awake. The whispers continued, low, rhythmic, almost deliberate. My pulse began hammering in my ears. I strained to hear actual words, anything to identify whether it was a language or just the wind playing tricks. But it wasn't the wind. The wind moves, it shifts, it rises and falls. This didn't. This was constant. Measured, methodical, and far too close. I slowly sat up and gently pressed my hand on Caleb's shoulder. He didn't stir. Good. Whatever this was, I didn't want my kids waking up to it. I reached for the flashlight next to my sleeping bag. My fingers brushed metal, and the whispers stopped instantly, not faded, not paused, stopped, like someone, or multiple someones, realized I was awake. The silence that followed felt hollow, thick, heavy. I held my breath, waiting. Then, crack, A branch snapped just outside, not a dry twig. A branch, something, someone, big enough to put weight on it. My throat tightened. I leaned forward slowly, listening. Another sound followed, a soft exhale, too human to dismiss. I didn't unzip the tent, didn't call out, didn't pretend to be brave. I sat there frozen, my heart pounding so loudly it drowned out everything else. Then I heard it. A quiet, deliberate step. Then another. Then another. Moving away from the tent. Through the pine needles, long strides, measured pacing, and then, after a few seconds, silence again. I waited for 20 whole minutes before I finally exhaled. Whatever was out there seemed to be gone, but the feeling it left behind, that stayed. A pressure, a presence, a certainty. Something had been standing just feet from where my family slept, watching, listening, waiting. When morning finally broke, sunlight warming the tent, the terror of the night felt almost unreal. Lauren was the first to stir. Her voice was soft, raspy with sleep. "Mornin', handsome." She nudged my shoulder. "You slept terribly." I forced a smile. "Ground is basically granite. Who sleeps well out here?" Partially true, but she didn't need the entire truth. Not yet. The kids woke next. Mia cheerfully announced she'd dreamed about marshmallows. Caleb claimed he'd heard an owl, maybe a great horned one, around 3 a.m. He wasn't far off, but he hadn't heard the whispers or the footsteps. Thank God. Lauren and I started breakfast, eggs on the camp stove, toast over the fire. As I cracked an egg, Lauren stepped closer, lowering her voice so the kids wouldn't hear. "You okay?" "Yeah," I said. "Just weird dreams." She watched me for a second too long. Lauren had always been a human lie detector. If something was wrong, she sensed it. "You sure it wasn't?" She paused. "Someone else's campsite, people walking by. Voices carry weird out here." I wanted so badly to agree, to chalk it all up to paranoia. But the whispers, they didn't sound like passing hikers. "Still," I told her, "probably." She nodded, but not convincingly. And for a moment, as the breeze rustled the treetops, I saw something flicker across her expression. A shadow of worry. Maybe even recognition. After breakfast, we decided to take the kids on one of the short nature trails. A simple loop, maybe 2 miles total, perfect for families. Lauren packed the day bag with snacks, water bottles, and a tiny first aid kit she insisted on carrying everywhere, even the grocery store. As we locked up the cooler in the SUV, I spotted someone approaching our campsite. Tall man, ranger uniform, graying beard, sharp eyes that scanned every detail. He stopped a few feet away and tipped his hat. "Morning, I'm Ranger Dalton." His voice was calm but carried an edge. Not unfriendly, just alert. Lauren smiled. "Good morning. Everything okay?" "Just doing rounds." His gaze drifted to the woods behind our tent. "You folks hear anything unusual last night?" The question froze me. Lauren answered before I could. "Just normal forest sounds. Why?" Dalton shifted his weight, jaw tightening. "We've had reports the past week or so. Strange noises, people walking around campsites after dark, sightings of individuals that don't belong here." Lauren's brow furrowed. "Individuals?" He didn't answer, not directly. Instead, he looked at me. "Sleep light, sir?" I swallowed. "Light enough?" He nodded, like he already knew. Then he said something that made my skin go cold. "If you hear whispering," he said quietly, "don't respond." Lauren blinked. "What?" Dalton continued as if reciting protocol. "Stay inside after dark. Keep your lantern's flame low, and whatever you do—" He paused, eyes shifting toward the dense tree line. Don't follow anything that looks familiar into the woods. A chill crawled up my spine. Why would we? I asked. He studied me for a long moment, then, just trust me. He tipped his hat, turned, and walked away. As soon as he was out of earshot, Lauren whispered, "What was that about?" I didn't have an answer, but inside, the unease that had been simmering since dawn solidified into something heavier. I wasn't imagining last night. Something was out there, and the ranger knew it. The trail was beautiful, peaceful, sunlight filtering through the leaves, birds calling to each other from the canopy above. The kids skipped ahead, collecting pine cones and comparing them like rare treasures. For a little while, it almost felt normal again. Lauren reached for my hand, lacing her fingers through mine. "You're quiet today," she said softly. I hesitated, then nodded. "I just didn't sleep well. The noises last night, they felt close." Lauren squeezed my hand. "I heard something too." I stopped walking. "You did?" She nodded slowly. "I woke up around 3. It was like someone was muttering outside. I thought it was you, but you were asleep." A cold wave rolled over me. "Why didn't you say anything?" She shrugged weakly. "I didn't want to scare the kids, and honestly, I wasn't sure I hadn't dreamed it." We walked in silence for a while, each step crunching softly on leaves. The forest suddenly too quiet, too still. Then Mia shouted from up ahead, "Mom, Dad, come look!" Lauren let go of my hand and hurried over to her. Caleb stood rigid beside his sister, pointing at something on the ground. When I saw it, my stomach dropped. A footprint, not a shoe print, a bare footprint, small, human, fresh enough that the edges were sharp, not softened by wind or debris. Another print trailed behind it, and another, leading off the marked trail and into the dense underbrush. Lauren crouched down, voice barely above a whisper. That's a child's footprint." Caleb swallowed. "Looks about Mia's size." I looked at Mia's feet, tiny, delicate, perfect. I looked at the footprints again. Same size, same shape, same spacing between the strides. Like a child her age had walked barefoot into the woods sometime that morning. But this wasn't a place where children wandered alone. And this wasn't a footprint of someone carefree or playing. There was something wrong about it. The depth, the pressure points, the way the toes splayed. It looked like the child wasn't walking. It looked like the child was being pulled. Lauren stood slowly, her face pale. "Evan," she whispered, "we need to go back." I agreed, immediately, but as we turned around, heading back toward the safety of the trail, Mia tugged my shirt and asked in her small, innocent voice, "Daddy, why is there another one?" "Another what?" She pointed deeper into the trees. And that's when I saw it, a second set of footprints, bigger, much bigger, adult-sized, following the small ones, step for step, too close, too deliberate, too controlled. The adult prints never overtook the child's. They stayed behind, shadowing them, tracking them, or herding them. Lauren grabbed my arm. "Evan," she whispered, her voice trembling. "Someone is out here." I scanned the trees. Nothing moved, no sound, no birds chirping, just the long, empty quiet of a forest holding its breath. Whatever walked through here, it wasn't far, and it wasn't done, not by a long shot. The walk back to camp felt wrong, not dangerous, not yet, but charged. Like the air had shifted somehow. You know that feeling when you walk into a room and immediately know a conversation just happened. That silent electricity, the tension that sits just behind your ears. That's what it felt like walking through those trees. Every snap of a branch made the kids jump. Every bird rustle sent Lauren's hand to her chest. Even the sunlight felt off, filtered thinner, too weak to reach the forest floor. Caleb stuck close to me, his usual excitement replaced with something quieter, more aware. "Dad," he said softly, "do you think another family came through here last night? Like a barefoot family?" Lauren shot me a quick look, the kind of look that said, "Don't you dare scare him." So I kneeled next to Caleb and smiled the calmest smile I could fake. "Probably just hikers," I said. "Some people walk barefoot on nature trails. It's like grounding." "Grounding," he repeated. "Like electricity?" "Kind of," I said. "It's supposed to help you feel connected." He nodded slowly. He didn't fully buy it, I could tell, but he accepted it enough to keep walking. Mia, however, kept glancing back over her shoulder. "Daddy," she whispered, "is the barefoot girl still behind us?" My throat tightened. "What barefoot girl?" "The one who left those footprints." She said it like she'd seen her, like she knew her. Lauren crouched down immediately, brushing hair from Mia's face. "Sweetheart, you didn't see anyone, right? You just saw the prints?" Mia hesitated. "I don't know." Her voice was small, confused, almost dreamy. Then she said something that made every hair on my arms stand up. She sounded like me. Lauren's eyes snapped to mine, wide, terrified. "Mia," she said, trying to stay calm. "What do you mean she sounded like you?" Mia shrugged. "I heard someone say my name this morning, but it wasn't you or Daddy." I felt my heartbeat spike. Caleb whispered, "Where were you when you heard it?" Mia pointed toward the woods behind our campsite. "Over there." Lauren stood instantly. "We're going back, now." No one argued, not even Caleb, who normally complained about ending activities too early. Everyone felt it. Someone or something had been close enough for Mia to hear her own name spoken back to her. When our campsite finally came into view, I exhaled with a relief so sudden it almost hurt. Nothing looked disturbed. Nothing appeared moved or touched. The tent stood where we left it. The fire pit was cold ash. Our chairs, our cooler, our backpacks, everything exactly the same, at least on the surface. But the moment we stepped into the clearing, Lauren grabbed my wrist. "Evan," she whispered. She pointed toward the picnic table, the map, the one the ranger gave us, the one I folded neatly and weighed down with a rock, was now spread open. Not just open, rotated toward the woods. Deliberately, and circled in charcoal, thick, heavy strokes, was a spot nearly a mile off trail, nowhere near a marked path. No campsite, no landmark, just deep forest. Someone had drawn it, someone had been at our table, someone had touched our things. Lauren's breathing hitched. Did you do that?" "Of course not," I said. Caleb stepped closer, squinting. "That charcoal wasn't here before." He was right. There was no charcoal on our site, no burnt wood like that, no writing instruments. Lauren took a step back, instinctively pulling Mia behind her. "Evan," she whispered shakily, "someone was here while we were gone." My eyes scanned every tree, every shadow, every doorway between the branches. Whoever circled that spot. Were they watching us now? The silence grew heavier, almost oppressive. Usually a forest has background noise, birds, insects, wind, life. But this was a void. Mia clung to Lauren's leg. Caleb stood so still he barely looked like himself. "Maybe," Lauren whispered, "it was the ranger." "No," I said immediately. "Ranger Dalton had a pencil, not charcoal. And this is deliberate, like someone wants us to go there. Lauren's hand trembled as she traced the circled spot without touching it. Why would someone want that? I didn't answer. I didn't need to. We both knew the terrifying truth. People who want you to walk into the woods don't want you to come back out. We were discussing packing up and leaving when Caleb froze. "Dad," he whispered, "don't turn around fast." My skin prickled. Lauren tightened her grip on Mia. I forced my breathing to slow. "What do you see?" I whispered. Caleb swallowed hard. "There's someone standing behind the trees." My blood turned to ice. "Where?" I asked softly. "Between those two pines," he said. "The tall ones with the broken branch." My peripheral vision picked up the location. I didn't look directly. Not yet. "Caleb," I whispered, "describe them." "Tall," he said. "Really tall, wearing dark clothes." "Human?" "I think so." Lauren's face drained of color. "Evan," she mouthed silently, "please." That was the moment I felt it, a presence, the unmistakable awareness of being watched. Slowly, painfully, slowly, I turned my head, just enough, just slightly, just enough to see a figure, tall, thin, standing impossibly still, half hidden behind the trees, face obscured by shadow, watching us, not moving, not shifting weight, not reacting, just watching. Lauren whispered, "We need to get in the car." Without taking my eyes off the figure, I said, "Kids, listen to me. Slowly get your stuff, quietly." Shuffling, soft breathing, a zipper. The figure remained motionless. I stepped slightly forward. Not a threat, just testing. The figure tilted its head, a slow, unnatural angle, like it wasn't studying me, like it was imitating me. I grabbed the keys from the picnic table. Lauren lifted Mia. Caleb clutched his backpack. "Now," I said under my breath, "go to the car. Don't run. Don't look behind you." They moved, quiet but fast. I stepped backward toward them. The figure remained still. Then a whisper, not spoken loudly, not yelled, soft, breathy, right across the clearing. "Evan." My lungs froze. Lauren fumbled the car door open. Another whisper came, higher pitched, childlike. "Mia." Lauren choked back a sob. "Go!" I shouted, shoving the kids inside, jumping into the driver's seat, slamming the doors shut. I hit the locks. Lauren turned, eyes wide with terror. The figure was gone. Not walked away, not retreated. Gone, as if it had never been there. I slammed the engine on. The SUV sputtered, then died. "No, no, no, come on!" I tried again. The engine turned once, then choked. Dead. Lauren started shaking. "Evan, what's happening? Why isn't it starting?" I tried a third time. Nothing. The battery was gone. Completely drained. In the span of minutes. Mia whimpered. Caleb whispered, "Dad, I don't think it wants us to leave." I gripped the wheel, knuckles white. "I'm going to figure this out," I said. "I promise." But inside I knew. The figure had circled a place on our map. It whispered our names, it mimicked voices, it drained the power from our vehicle. It wasn't just watching us, it was herding us, pushing us toward that circled location in the woods. And whatever waited there, we weren't ready for it, we weren't prepared, and we weren't alone. Not anymore. The first few minutes inside the SUV felt like drowning. Lauren's breathing was shallow, too fast. Mia whimpered quietly into her mother's lap. Caleb sat stiff as stone, eyes locked on the windshield, as if expecting the figure to reappear at any moment. I kept twisting the keys uselessly. The engine didn't even cough now. It was just dead, not weak, not struggling, dead. And in that horrible stillness, the truth settled on me like a crushing weight. We were trapped, not by accident, Not by mechanical failure, but intentionally, strategically. Something in these woods had made sure we couldn't leave. Something that had whispered our names. Something that mimicked voices. Something that circled a spot on our map like a signature. I didn't want to believe it. I wanted to find a rational explanation. Bad battery, corroded wires, a freak coincidence. But deep down, I knew better. Ranger Dalton's warning replayed in my mind. If you hear whispering, don't respond. And then, don't follow anything that looks familiar into the woods. The bare child footprints, the adult ones tracking them, the figure behind the pines, the voice that called my name in a tone twisted just slightly wrong. This wasn't a lost hiker. This wasn't a prank. This wasn't wildlife. Whatever was here, it wasn't human. I forced myself to breathe slowly. If I panicked, my family was done. Lauren whispered, trembling, "Evan, what are we going to do?" I looked at her. She trusted me. She needed me to be strong. And our kids, God, our kids needed us to be strong. I squeezed her hand. "We're going to fix the car," I said with a confidence I didn't feel. "We're going to stay together. And we're going to be smart, that's all." Caleb looked at me, trying to read me. He was scared, really scared, but he was holding it in because he didn't want his sister to freak out, just like his mother. Mia whispered, "Daddy, is the tall man going to come back?" Lauren pulled her tight, stroking her hair. "No, sweetheart," Lauren said. "He's gone." She said it like a prayer, not a fact. I looked around through the windows. Forest, stillness, but the type of stillness that comes right before a storm. Pregnant, waiting, charged. "We're staying in the car for a minute," I said. "Let me think." I listened, really listened. Nothing, not a bird, not an insect, not the wind. An unnatural quiet, a predatory quiet. I hated myself for it. But I whispered to Lauren, "We can't stay here all day." Whatever that was, it's pushing us. Caleb swallowed. "Toward the circle spot." He said it like finishing a sentence I hadn't wanted to say. Lauren stared at me. "You think this is a trap?" I didn't answer. I didn't need to. We all knew. 5 minutes passed, then 10. Finally, I made the decision no parent wants to make. "We need to get outside." Lauren stiffened. "Absolutely not." "Lauren," I whispered softly, "the car isn't safe either." She opened her mouth to argue. Then we all heard it. Splash. A single loud splash from the creek behind our campsite, like something heavy stepping into shallow water. Caleb jerked upright. Lauren's hand flew to her mouth. Mia whispered, "Mommy," in a broken little voice. We froze. Another splash followed, slow, heavy, measured. It was walking in the creek, not rushing, not hiding. Walking. We waited. The steps moved parallel to our camp, staying just behind the tree line. Then they stopped. The silence afterward was suffocating. My instinct screamed, "Do not get out of this vehicle. Do not move. Do not breathe." But then the choice was made for us, because out of nowhere, the SUV began to shake, not violently, not like an attack, but gently, testing, as if something large ran its hand, or something like a hand, across the metal frame. Lauren's breath hitched so sharply I thought she was choking. The kids clutched each other. I didn't move. I didn't blink. The pressure slid from the back of the car, to the side, to the passenger door. A shadow crossed the window, tall, thin, wrong in its proportions. I reached instinctively for the door lock. Then it stopped. The shifting pressure vanished. The forest fell silent again. The presence withdrew. For now. "We need the ranger," I whispered. Lauren turned sharply toward me. Evan, he said not to. I know what he said, but we're sitting ducks here. That thing is circling us. It knows we're trapped. I lowered my voice. And it's smart, Lauren. Whatever it is, it's hurting us. The kids listened silently. Caleb asked, "Where's the nearest ranger station?" I pulled the map out slowly. The charcoal circle stared back at me like an accusation. But a few inches from it, just west, there was the ranger's cabin. A small square labeled Patrol Post 2. It looked close enough to walk, maybe a mile and a half. But to reach it, we'd have to pass near the circled area. My stomach dropped. Lauren read my face. No, absolutely not. We're not walking through those woods. I'll go alone, I said. No, she snapped. Evan, no, you're not leaving me and the kids here with that thing. It won't attack the car, I said. At least I prayed it wouldn't. It already touched the car, she whispered. She wasn't wrong. I exhaled. Then we all go. Lauren's face twisted in fear. Evan, we can't take the kids into that forest. We can't stay here, I said firmly. It wants us stuck. It wants us isolated. We're doing exactly what it expects by hiding. Caleb swallowed. If we stick to the creek, we'll stay quieter. I looked at him, surprised. He was thinking like a survivor, trying to help. Lauren stared at the map. What if the ranger isn't even there? He's our only chance. Silence. Finally, Lauren whispered, "Okay." But before we could step outside, something happened that made my blood freeze. A voice called from the woods, clear, loud, familiar. Ivan! Lauren's face drained of color. Caleb grabbed my arm, but then a second voice came. Loren, bring the children. The voices sounded exactly like us, distorted only slightly but unmistakably our tones, our cadence, and they were getting closer, slow, steady, and wrong. Lauren gripped my hand, trembling violently. We need to leave. Now. I opened the SUV door. The air outside felt colder than before, thinner, stretched tight like skin over bone. We stay together, I whispered, no matter what. Lauren nodded fiercely. Caleb grabbed Mia's hand. I stepped out first. The forest loomed around us, silent and watchful. Then, crack! A branch snapped behind the SUV. Close, too close. Lauren whispered, "Oh, God!" "Move," I said. My voice low and urgent. "Stay low, stay fast." We ducked and moved quickly toward the tree line, toward the creek trail, hearts hammering. And then, from behind us, "Stop!" A single command, spoken in my exact voice. Lauren gasped, stumbling. Caleb nearly yanked Mia off her feet, trying to keep her moving. "Don't turn around," I hissed. "No matter what you hear, don't look back." We ran, barefoot Mia stumbling through leaves, Caleb pushing her forward, Lauren gripping my hand hard enough to cut off circulation. And behind us, footsteps exploded into motion, fast, rushing, pounding, but not natural, not human, something long, something with reach, something that galloped more than ran, hitting the ground in heavy, uneven beats. Then it called again, "Come back," this time in Lauren's voice. "Come back to us, Evan." The words shook something deep inside me, a primal terror no adult ever wants to feel. Lauren whispered, "Don't listen, don't listen, don't listen." We ran harder. The creek's glint came into view between the trees. Water, movement, life. "Almost there," I yelled. Then Mia screamed. I spun toward her. She wasn't looking behind us. She was pointing ahead, at the water, where something stood ankle deep in the creek. Something tall, something vaguely human, something wearing clothes similar to mine, but darker, wet, clinging wrong. It tilted its head in that same unnatural way. and whispered, "Where are you going?" The creature standing in the creek didn't move, didn't blink, didn't breathe. It simply leaned its head to the side, like a curious animal examining prey. Its height was wrong, too tall. Its joints were off by degrees, subtle enough to question, obvious enough to terrify. And its voice. Oh God, its voice sounded exactly like mine. Same pitch, same rhythm, same breathiness when I say my W's. "Where are you going?" it repeated softly. Mia clung to Lauren, trembling violently. Caleb pressed his arm in front of her like a little protector. Lauren whispered through clenched teeth, "Evan, there are two of them." She wasn't wrong, because behind us, back near the SUV, the footsteps restarted. Slow at first, then faster, then pounding. We were being boxed in, herded, driven toward the circled area on the map like cattle to slaughter. Or sacrifice. My brain flipped into survival mode. Decision tree, paths, angles, risks. Left, thick brush. Right, too steep. Backward, something was coming. Forward, the creek and the tall mimic of me. No safe route, no clear chance. And the worst part? None of this was random. Everything we saw, everything we heard, everything that followed us, it all pointed to one chilling truth. We were chosen by something ancient, something hungry, something that didn't just mimic sound or shape, but intention. Before I could speak, the thing in the creek took a single step forward. Water splashed unnaturally, almost delayed, like the sound didn't sync with its movements. Its head slowly turned toward Caleb. "Come here." Same voice. My voice. Lauren sobbed. Caleb's eyes widened, tears forming. "No," I said firmly. The creature tilted its head the other way. "Come here," it repeated, and now the voice was deeper, older, more distorted, as if layers of mouths were speaking through one hollow throat. I stepped in front of my family. "You're not us," I said, "and you never will be." The creature twitched, a single jerk like a glitch in reality. Then it spoke again, but not in my voice this time, in Lauren's. "Evan, please." My wife shuddered. "Stop," she whispered, stepping backward. The mimic took another step out of the water. Its feet didn't move like normal feet. They dragged, pulling the creek behind them as though the water clung too tightly. That's when I decided we weren't going to the ranger cabin. We weren't hiking out of here. There was only one way we were getting out alive. We had to outsmart the things mimicking us. I grabbed Lauren's hand, squeezed hard, then lowered my voice so only she could hear. "We need to confuse it." "How?" she whispered. No eye contact, no names, no reacting. They use our recognition against us. She nodded shakily. I turned to Caleb, whispering urgently, "When I say run, take Mia and stay low. Don't look back. Don't look at anything that sounds like us, understand?" His eyes filled with brave, terrified resolve. "Okay." The footsteps behind us grew closer. The creature in front stepped fully onto the shore. Two threats closing in, now or never. I stepped forward slowly, lifting the map, and then, out loud, I did something insane. I pretended to speak to the creature as if it were human. "You circled this spot," I said, voice steady. "You want us to see something there, right?" Lauren's eyes widened. She thought I'd lost my mind. The kids stared, frozen. The creature didn't react, didn't blink, didn't breathe. It just stared, head still angled at that disturbing tilt. I took a few steps sideways toward a narrow opening in the trees. "You want to show us something," I said again. "Okay, we're coming." The footsteps behind us stopped. A long silence. Then, The creature in the creek slowly straightened its head and pointed directly toward the circle location on the map. The place whoever or whatever drew that charcoal mark wanted us to go. I forced myself not to shiver. Then, still holding their attention, I whispered sideways to my family, "Run!" We bolted. The forest exploded with motion immediately. Branches snapped. Footsteps pounded. The ground shook. The kids ran with everything they had, Lauren gripping Mia's hand so tightly I feared she'd dislocate it. Behind us, the creature let out a low, guttural sound. Not a scream, not a growl. Something like wood splitting under pressure, followed by the thing near the SUV answering back, echoing it. They were communicating, coordinating. "Hurry!" I yelled, pushing Caleb ahead. We cut through dense pine, needles scratching our skin, branches snagging our clothes. The air hummed with a strange energy, like static before a lightning strike. On our left, something ran parallel to us, matching our speed without touching the ground. "Don't look!" I yelled. Lauren covered Mia's eyes. Caleb stared at the dirt, forcing himself not to glance sideways. We pushed until our lungs burned. The forest began to change around us. The trees thinned. The ground hardened. A faint smell, metallic, rotten, filled the air. Lauren gagged as we ran. "What is that?" she whispered. I knew. We were nearing the circled location on the map. The place whoever visited our campsite had wanted us to go. The place the ranger avoided naming. The place the mimics seemed to be guiding us toward. The place that smelled like old blood. The trees suddenly opened, and we stumbled into a clearing that made my soul recoil. Not a natural clearing, not a pretty one. A circular patch of dead earth, perfectly symmetrical, as if carved out with surgical precision. No grass, no life, just dark, compacted soil. In the center stood a lone wooden post, weathered, splintered, ancient, and tied to it with rotting rope was a backpack, a child's backpack, pink with little white stars. Lauren covered her mouth with both hands. "Oh, God," she whispered. Mia whimpered. Caleb clung to my jacket. I took slow steps toward it, dread hollowing my chest. The ropes were old, decades old, but the backpack wasn't. I touched the zipper, fresh, clean, recent. Something rustled behind us. Lauren spun around. The creatures were emerging from the trees, 2 of them at first, then more. Tall, thin, human-shaped, but not human. Dozens, all stepping toward the clearing, but stopping just short of the dead earth, like there was an invisible barrier they couldn't cross. I whispered, "They brought us here, but they can't enter." Lauren shook her head violently. Why? What is this place?" I opened the backpack. Inside was a Ziploc bag. Inside the Ziploc bag, a note written in a child's handwriting. 4 words, "Don't let them mimic." The paper shook in my hand. Lauren grabbed my arm. "What does that mean? Evan, what does that mean?" Before I could answer, we heard it. A twig snapping directly behind us. Slow, careful, close. We turned, and what stood there didn't belong to the first group. It was older, heavier, clothed in shredded ranger fabric. Its face, oh God, it wasn't a mimic, it was a man, or what was left of one. His skin was sunken, eyes hollow, jaw crooked, blood dried on his shirt. Ranger Dalton, except his throat was slit, yet he smiled at us, and in a wet, bubbling voice he whispered, "Too late." The thing wearing Ranger Dalton's half-rotten face took one step toward us, then another. The forest fell silent. So silent I could hear Mia's tiny breaths, the soft whimper she was trying to hold back. I could hear the tremble in Lauren's voice when she whispered, "Evan, That's impossible. Ranger Dalton, he wasn't dead. She didn't want to finish the sentence, but we all knew what we'd seen earlier. The shredded uniform, the trail of blood, the unnatural way his throat was torn open. Caleb grabbed my hand, not like a child seeking help, but like a kid preparing to run for his life. The creature that looked like Dalton blinked once, a slow, vertical blink, not horizontal, not human. It stepped closer, and the other mimics, the tall, pale ones, moved aside for it, like it outranked them, like it was the first, the oldest, the one that had learned how to steal faces long before the others existed. Lauren backed up until her shoulders pressed against mine. "Evan," she whispered, voice cracking, "what do we do?" I tightened my grip on the Ziploc note. Don't let them mimic, but they already had. They mimicked voices, expressions, our faces, our footsteps, our height, our posture, our breathing. They mimicked everything except, wait! A cold realization hit me. They never mimicked choices, not once. They could imitate appearance, sound, even the way we moved. But not why we moved, not intention, not decision. That's why they kept hurting us, steering us, manipulating us. They couldn't improvise, only imitate. They couldn't create new paths, only follow existing ones. If that was true, I could use it. But Ranger Dalton stepped closer, and my moment of clarity evaporated under a wave of visceral fear. His head tilted the way the others did, like a predator trying out human motion as a costume. Then he spoke, but not with his mouth. His jaw didn't move at all. The sound came from deep in his throat, vibrating the air. "You came to the wrong part of the forest." Lauren gasped. It was Dalton's voice, perfect, exact, like a recording. He continued, "You followed the trail, just like the last family and the one before that." The ground beneath us felt unsteady. Mia covered her ears and cried softly. Caleb clenched his fists, stepping closer to us. I forced myself to meet the creature's dead eyes. "We're not staying," I said. "Let us go." Dalton's mimic stared for a long, unbearable moment. Then it smiled, a wide, cracked smile that split the dried flesh around its mouth. "It isn't about staying. It's about replacing." The forest rustled around us. Wind? No. The tall, pale mimics shifted closer, forming a loose ring around the clearing. They still avoided stepping on the dead earth circle, still respected whatever invisible boundary kept them out. Ranger Dalton stepped 1 foot into the soil. It sank like the dirt was swallowing it. Lauren gasped. "What is that?" she choked out. Dalton turned his head toward her too smoothly. "Where the forest remembers." I felt adrenaline surge. "What does that mean?" I snapped. Dalton didn't look at me. He imitated looking at me. His head jerked to match the direction of my voice. Long before rangers marked these trails, long before towns built roads, people lived here. I swallowed hard, listening. The first settlers learned quickly. This land copies life, takes what it sees, mimics what it wants. Lauren whispered shakily, "The stories, the disappearances, the unmarked graves." Dalton continued, "The old tribes warned about this clearing, a place where the forest chooses who stays and who gets taken." His head twitched, spine arching like something inside his body was rearranging itself. They called them. A sickening cracking sound echoed from inside its jaw. The hollow echo. My skin froze. Lauren covered her mouth again. Caleb whispered to me, "Dad, they're not mimics. They're echoes." I squeezed his shoulder. "You're right. Dalton nodded jerkily like a puppet reacting. Everything leaves an echo, a footprint, a memory. The forest feeds on it. Then he leaned forward, impossibly close now. And when an echo is strong enough, it grows a face. Lauren sobbed quietly. Ranger Dalton, whatever was left of him, extended one hand toward her, a gesture that would almost look comforting, if not for the blackened bark-like veins crawling up his arm. "You should not have camped here," it whispered. My heartbeat hammered in my throat. I forced myself to think past the horror. "It can't enter this circle," I said slowly, watching the pale mimics linger at the edges. "And neither can the others." Dalton grinned. Skin cracked across his cheeks. "They cannot enter because the soil holds a memory, human memory." "What does that mean?" Lauren demanded. Dalton turned toward the backpack tied to the post. "That belonged to the girl from the last family." My breath caught. Lauren whispered, "There were others." Dalton nodded. "They ran, they hid, they fought, but the forest always takes what it wants." Its head tilted. "And now, we want you." I pulled the Ziploc note out again. "Don't let them mimic," I read aloud. Dalton's grin faded. The pale mimics shifted uneasily. Even the trees seemed to stiffen. The forest didn't like that phrase. Dalton's voice dropped, dark and gravelly. "Where did you get that?" "You know exactly where." The creature's face twitched. A ripple of confusion or anger crossed its features. Caleb whispered, "Dad, it doesn't like the note." Dalton hissed, a low, unnatural sound. That child failed to replace properly. The echo broke. Memory snapped. She was rejected. Rejected? I felt nausea rise. "What happens when an echo is rejected?" Dalton pointed toward the dead circle. "Buried." Lauren's knees nearly buckled. I held her up. "This place," I whispered, horrified, "is where the ones who resist are put." Dalton nodded. "You came here on your own. We did not have to lead you. That means your echoes are strong." The pale mimics leaned closer. Dalton reached out with a broken, black-veined hand. "You will replace beautifully." I stepped in front of my family. "No!" Dalton froze. The forest held its breath. Every pale mimic stopped moving. No wind, no sound, nothing. Just the oppressive stillness of prey refusing its fate. Dalton's eyes narrowed. "What did you say?" I swallowed hard. "I said no. You don't get to choose us. We choose ourselves." Dalton tilted his head. Another glitch-like movement. "You cannot choose what the forest wants." But he was wrong. I finally understood. The note wasn't a warning to flee. It was instruction, a weapon. Don't let them mimic. They could only imitate what they observed, what we reacted to, what we let them see. So what if I didn't let them? I stepped closer to Dalton, close enough to smell the rot under his skin, close enough to whisper, "You're copying me, right?" Dalton blinked slowly. "That is how life continues." I leaned forward. "But what if I stopped giving you something to copy?" Dalton froze. Confusion flickered across his face. He didn't understand. They never did. Lauren whispered, "Evan, what are you doing?" I spoke loudly, so every echo heard it. "You mimic reactions, patterns, choices, voices, faces, but you don't create anything on your own." Dalton's jaw clenched. I stepped back into the dead circle, raising the note. "You didn't bring us here," I said. "We brought you here." A ripple passed through the pale mimics. They shifted uncomfortably. Dalton hissed again. "This place is for rejection." "Yeah," I said, heart pounding. "And we're rejecting you." Then, slowly, deliberately, I turned my back on him. Lauren gasped. Caleb grabbed my sleeve. The mimics reacted instantly, shuffling, twitching, flickering, like my movement broke their script. "If you can only imitate," I said calmly, "then imitate this." I reached into my pocket, pulled out my lighter, flicked it on. A tiny flame against an ancient forest. Dalton took a step backward. The pale mimics recoiled. Fire. Something they couldn't copy, something unpredictable, chaotic, human. I lifted the flame high. "You don't get to replace us," I said. "We're breaking the pattern." The mimics whispered, dozens of voices layering into a horrifying harmony. Dalton screamed, a sound that wasn't human, wasn't animal, wasn't earthly. And then everything happened at once. The pale mimics surged forward but stopped just short of the dead soil. The flame flickered. Dalton clawed at the air between us, desperate, furious, and beneath our feet. The ground trembled. A low, deep groan rose from below. Something ancient waking, something older than the forest. Then a crack split the dirt down the center of the circle, a deep black fissure, and from the crack, a breath, cold, empty, hungry. Lauren screamed. Caleb pulled Mia close. Dalton shrieked in agony, stumbling backward. The pale mimics began to warp, arms bending, faces melting, forms vibrating like reflections on water. The forest rejected them, all of them, and I realized this circle wasn't made to trap people. It was made to trap the echoes, and we had activated it. Dalton's voice broke into a dozen layers. "Stop!" His body cracked violently, collapsing inward like wet paper. One by one, the pale mimics imploded, folding in on themselves, collapsing into shapes that flickered between human and not human before dissolving into the soil. Dalton fell to his knees, reached toward me. "Don't let them—" His voice cut off. His face caved in. His body collapsed entirely, and the forest went silent, completely silent, not peaceful, not safe, stunned, as if the woods themselves hadn't expected what just happened. Lauren whispered, "Evan, what did we do?" I stared at the crack in the earth, still breathing, still alive, still waiting. "We didn't kill them," I said softly. Caleb swallowed hard. "Then what happened to them?" I exhaled. "We sent them back." Lauren's voice trembled. "Back where?" I looked at the crack, at the darkness within it, at the ancient cold breath rising out, and whispered, "I don't think it has a name." For a long, paralyzed moment, none of us moved. The crack in the ground lay there like an open wound, inhaling and exhaling cold air in slow, patient drafts. The dead circle of soil, once quiet and still, now felt like the surface of something much bigger underneath, something that had turned over once in its sleep, then gone still again. Lauren's fingers dug into my forearm. "Evan," she whispered, barely audible. "Get them out of here." Her voice shook, not from panic this time, from exhaustion, from total, soul-deep depletion. Mia buried her face in her mother's shirt. Caleb stood on my other side, rigid, fists clenched so tightly his knuckles were white. The forest around us remained frozen. No wind, no leaves rustling, no distant animal calls, just the sound of that impossible breath seeping up out of the crack, in, out, cold, colder. I stepped backward, slowly guiding my family with me until our shoes met living earth again. Damp leaves, roots, scattered pine needles. The hair on my arms began to settle, not all the way, just enough that my hands stopped shaking. I took one last look at the center of the clearing. Ranger Dalton's body was gone. So were the pale mimics. So was the pink backpack. No bones, no clothes, no blood. just the cracked circle of soil breathing like a buried lung. If someone stumbled on this place tomorrow, they'd think it was nothing, just dirt, just an odd patch of dead ground in an otherwise healthy forest. They'd never know what it had almost done to us. They'd never see the faces that tried to wear ours. "Don't let them mimic," I whispered again, mostly to myself, and for the first time since we'd arrived at Blackwood Pines. The forest answered, not with words, not with voices, but with wind. A slow gust moved through the trees, bending branches, stirring the leaves. Birds called out from somewhere high above us, tentative, cautious. Life was returning. The forest was still dangerous, still ancient, still wrong in ways I didn't understand. But whatever had been actively hunting us had been thrown backwards into whatever hollowed place it came from. We had broken something, or maybe just broken their pattern. Either way, staying here was suicide. I turned to my family. "We're leaving," I said, "right now." No one argued. We didn't run. Running felt like an invitation, like panic they could latch on to, copy, magnify. Instead, we walked. Fast, yes, but steady, step after step, eyes forward. Every so often Mia would stumble. Lauren would scoop her up and carry her for a few yards. Caleb stayed on my right, eyes scanning the trees, jaw set. He looked older than 10, too much older. The forest watched us go. I could feel it, that heavy awareness. But it didn't move to stop us. No voices, no shapes between the trunks, no mockery of our names. Once, halfway back to camp, I thought I saw something standing in the distance, a tall, pale figure almost blending with the bark. But it faded as soon as my eyes focused on it, like a thought I chose not to finish. We passed the creek. The water moved normally again, rippling, bubbling around rocks. Nothing standing in it this time. No wrong reflections. The silence had loosened. Birds sang. An insect buzzed past my ear. Somewhere far away, a woodpecker hammered against a tree. The world had started breathing again. Unlike that circle, by the time we reached the outline of our campsite, my legs felt like they'd been hollowed out. The tent was still there, the chairs, the cooler, the half-dismantled fire ring. Our SUV sat exactly where we'd left it, but something subtle had changed. I realized it when I touched the hood. Warm, not scorching, but warm. "Try it," Lauren said quietly. I slid into the driver's seat, hands trembling, and turned the key. The engine coughed. Once, twice, then roared to life like nothing had ever been wrong. I laughed. A wild, cracked sound that came out halfway between relief and hysteria. Mia cried harder, then laughed too. Caleb covered his face. Lauren buckled her seatbelt with shaking hands. The gas gauge showed just under half. Enough. Maybe not enough to feel safe, but enough to leave. I looked once more into the woods as I put the car into drive. The trees stood tall and still. For a moment, I thought I saw a face in the patterns of bark. 2 knots for eyes, a split for a mouth, watching us, evaluating, remembering. "Don't look," Lauren whispered. I looked down at the wheel, put my foot on the gas. We pulled away. This time the road stayed the way it was supposed to be. The drive back down the mountain felt surreal. Normal, almost. The cracked asphalt. The faded yellow lines. The wooden sign pointing toward the main ranger station. All of it looked like a set from a world we didn't belong to anymore. The SUV rumbled over potholes and gravel. Every noise made me flinch. Every shadow at the edge of the road felt like a test, like the forest asking, "Will you look? Will you react? Will you let us copy you one last time?" I didn't. I kept my eyes on the road. Lauren stared straight ahead too, knuckles white on her knees. Mia finally fell asleep, one hand still tangled in her mother's shirt. Caleb sat rigid, hands folded, eyes open and unblinking. When we pulled into the ranger lot, I felt something loosen in my chest. The station building stood where we'd first seen it. Sturdy log, stone chimney, faded bulletin board. A government truck was parked out front. Smoke drifted from the chimney. Someone was inside. I parked haphazardly and killed the engine. For one terrifying second, I expected the car to die on its own or lock us inside. It didn't. "It's okay," I said. "We're okay." I wasn't sure which of us I was trying to convince. We stepped out together, staying close. The front door creaked as I pushed it open. The smell of coffee hit first, then old paper, then pine cleaner. Behind the front counter stood a ranger, not Dalton, a woman this time, younger than Marjorie, older than us, sharp-eyed, controlled. Her name tag read K. Harris. Her smile flickered when she saw us. It vanished completely when her eyes registered our state. Dirty clothes, scraped hands, wild expressions. "Can I help you folks?" she asked carefully. Lauren spoke first. "We need to leave the park," she said, "right now." Harris nodded slowly. "Okay? You're free to go? Is everything all right? Did you have an accident?" "Something is wrong up there," I said. I didn't care how insane I sounded. Harris's gaze sharpened. "Wrong how?" I swallowed. "We saw someone out there. Something. People going missing. Weird noises. Our car—" I stopped myself before I blurted out. Our car was possessed by the forest. Our car wouldn't start, and there was a— My voice trailed off. How could I explain a forest that built copies of people out of memory and hunger? Harris studied us. "Which section were you in?" she asked. "Upper Hollow," I said. "Site 31. Her expression changed. Not dramatically, just enough. A small tightening around the eyes. A barely visible clench of the jaw. "That area's been problematic," she said finally, "for a long time." "You knew," I said quietly. She met my eyes. "We've had reports. Strange occurrences. Unexplained disappearances. We shut down some of the deeper trails years ago." "Then why is the campground still open?" Her face darkened. "Because shutting down the whole park would cost money. More than the local board wants to hear about, so they draw lines on a map and tell us to manage it." Her gaze softened just a fraction. "You're the first family I've seen come down from Upper Hollow, with everyone still together in—" She trailed off. Didn't finish the sentence. I didn't ask her to. Lauren whispered, "What about Ranger Dalton?" Harris blinked. "Who?" "Dalton," I repeated. "He came to our site this morning. Tall, older, beard, uniform. He warned us about whispers. He died in front of that cursed circle. Or whatever was left of him did." Harris's expression didn't change. "We don't have a Dalton at this station," she said. "Haven't had one in 10 years. My mouth went dry. Caleb whispered, "Dad." Harris continued, "We did have a Ranger Daniel Dalton on staff once, missing persons specialist. He disappeared on patrol a decade ago." The room felt smaller, quieter, more suffocating. Lauren took a step back. "You're saying he's been missing?" Harris nodded. "His patrol route included Upper Hollow. They never found a body, just his hat and his notebook." The breath left my lungs. Hat, notebook, memory, echo. "He's still there," I whispered. "Or part of him is." Harris tilted her head. "Look," she said, tone slightly softer now. "You should go home, get checked out. If you want to file a formal report, we'll take it. but I'm going to recommend you don't go back up there, not for any reason." She slid a clipboard across the counter. "Sign out, and don't come back to Blackwood Pines." There was something almost pleading in her voice. We signed, we walked out, we got in the car, and we left, just like that. But it didn't feel like the end of anything. It felt like surviving the first half of something much bigger. We didn't tell anyone the full story. How could we? We said we cut the trip short because the kids were scared, because we heard coyotes, because we weren't as outdoorsy as we thought. Our friends believed us. They laughed. They teased. "We told you camping wasn't your thing," my brother said. I laughed along, nodding, playing the part of the suburban dad who tried to be Bear Grylls and failed. But at night, when the house got quiet, when everyone was in bed and the only sound was the refrigerator humming, that's when the forest came back. Not literally, not trees growing in the walls or dirt in the bathtub, but echoes. Caleb started locking his bedroom door. He slept with a flashlight clutched in his hand. Sometimes I'd hear him murmur in his sleep, "Don't look at it, don't look at it, don't look." Mia wouldn't go near mirrors after dark. "Why not?" I asked gently the first time I noticed. She stared at her reflection like it wasn't hers. "Sometimes," she said quietly, "my face doesn't move the way I'm moving it." Lauren stood a little too long at the kitchen window most evenings, not because she was enjoying the sunset, because she was watching the tree line behind our house. We don't live near a forest. We live in a normal neighborhood, one of those developments with identical houses, trimmed lawns, and young maple trees the city planted in rows. But as the sun goes down and the yard fades into shadow, those thin little trees start to look taller, thicker, deeper, like if you blinked too long, you might open your eyes and see pines instead. I started triple-checking the locks, not because I thought someone was going to break in, because I was terrified something might knock. Softly, politely, and say my name in my own voice. It finally happened 3 weeks after we came home. I was in the kitchen, alone, rinsing out a mug. The house was quiet, TV off, dishwasher running faintly, Lauren upstairs reading to the kids. The night outside the window was the kind of still that always made me uneasy now. I finished the mug, set it in the drying rack, turned to grab a towel. Tap, tap, tap. 3 gentle knocks on the back door. I froze. My heart started pounding so hard I could feel it in my throat. The knocks came again, soft, measured, tap, 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 exactly like the SUV, exactly like the hallway closet, exactly like the forest. Every cell in my body screamed to run, to shove a chair against the doorknob, to scream for Lauren, to call 911, even if they'd think I was crazy. Instead, I did something I still don't fully understand. I walked to the door, slowly. For the first time, I didn't feel like prey. I felt angry. I flicked on the porch light. And there it was. Or rather, there I was, standing on my own back step. Same hair, same eyes, same posture, same hoodie, same scar on the eyebrow from when I was a stupid teenager and fell off my bike. It smiled, not wrong this time, not stretched, almost perfect. If you didn't know what you were looking for, you'd never catch it. The way its chest didn't rise quite right. The way the pupils didn't contract under the light. The stillness in the shoulders, too rigid for a living person. We stared at each other through the glass. My reflection looked back at me from outside. It raised a hand, pressed its palm against the window. I didn't move. It mouthed something. I had to focus to make out the words. "You left us." I didn't respond. Its lips twisted, mouthed again. We still remember your names. A low, cold anger moved through me, not fear this time, not helplessness, anger. I stepped closer, close enough to see the tiny fracture running through its front tooth that mine didn't have. A mistake, a flaw, an echo, not the original. It waited for me to speak. I didn't. My mind went back to that backpack, that note, that trapped child who somehow found a way to scratch out a sentence against the rules of the forest. Don't let them mimic. They needed us to play our part, to react, to feed them with recognition. I lifted my hand. The echo outside mirrored the movement perfectly. We were a reflection now. I raised my right hand. It raised its left. Of course it did, because that's all it could do. It didn't know what I would do next, and that was my advantage. I leaned toward the glass. For a second, I could see my frightened expression reflected inside its empty eyes. I kept my voice low, calm, controlled. "You're not me," I said, "and you never will be." It waited. I smiled, not kindly, not warmly, just enough. "You only exist because we walked into your forest," I said. "We broke your circle, we broke your pattern." Its smile faltered just slightly. "You're an echo," I whispered, "and sooner or later even echoes fade." We stared at each other, one heartbeat, two, three. Then I did it. I turned off the porch light, and I walked away. No flinching, no looking back, no pause. I went upstairs, sat on the edge of my daughter's bed while she slept, watched Caleb breathe, held Lauren's hand in the quiet dark. We didn't talk about the knock. We didn't need to. I don't pretend to understand everything we saw in those woods. I don't know what the hollow echo really is. I don't know how many faces it's already taken. I don't know if there are other forests like that, other circles of dirt breathing out someone else's memory. I do know this. It can't create. It can't love. It can't choose. It can only copy. The forest didn't hunt us because it hated us. It hunted us because it wanted to be us. Our jokes, our arguments, our whispered promises before bed, our way of saying each other's names. It wanted all of it, the way a starving person wants a hot meal. The way a lonely thing wants company, but wanting something doesn't mean it gets to have it. We got out because we broke the one rule it depends on. We stopped giving it new things to mimic. We stopped responding. We stopped looking. We stopped playing along. We chose each other over the fear. I still hear things sometimes. Footsteps in empty hallways, soft taps on the windows, my own voice whispering from somewhere it shouldn't be. But I don't answer. Not anymore. I took my family camping. Something ancient in the woods tried to wear our faces and walk through our lives. And maybe it will keep trying. Maybe somewhere out there in some dark patch of forest or empty stretch of land, something tall and wrong is still practicing my laugh, my walk, my smile, my voice, waiting for a crack in the door, a crack in my resolve. A moment when I forget the most important lesson those woods taught me. If you ever hear your name called from the tree line, if it sounds exactly like your mother, your husband, your child, or even yourself, don't answer, don't look, don't let it mimic, because some echoes are hungry, and some forests remember you long after you leave, and some things that appear in the woods don't just want to scare you, they want to become you. Sometimes, late at night, when the house is quiet and everyone is asleep, I walk softly down the hallway and stand at the doorway of my children's rooms. I watch them breathe. I watch them dream. I watch them exist in the most human, genuine, irreplaceable way. And every time I do, I'm reminded of something the forest taught me, something I didn't understand until the very end. The most precious things in our lives are fragile, and the world seen and unseen, will always try to take them, reshape them, or distract us from them. But nothing in this world can mimic the way a child squeezes your hand when they're scared. Nothing can mimic the way your partner's voice softens when they whisper, "I'm here." Nothing can mimic the laughter shared around a fire, the small memories made without cameras, the warmth of being truly together. We almost lost all of that. We almost lost each other. And now every sunrise feels different. Every morning when my kids run into the kitchen, every time Lauren smiles at me across the table, it all feels like a gift we were allowed to keep one more day. Not because we were stronger than what hunted us, but because in that moment when everything was falling apart, we chose to hold on to each other instead of giving into fear. And that's something the forest could never imitate. If there's one thing I hope you take from our story, it's this: hold on to the people you love, show up for them, fight for them, because in a world that can echo your voice and shadow your shape, your love is the one thing that can't be replaced, the one thing nothing can ever mimic, and maybe, just maybe, that's what saved us in the end.